Hello and welcome to Hollywood at Home from Arizona Public Media. I'm Victoria Lucas. Tonight's film holds an interesting place in movie history. It was the inspiration for the Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan hit You've Got Mail. It's director Ernst Lubitsch's classic romantic comedy, The Shop Around the Corner. James Stewart and Margaret Sullavan co-star in a match made in Hollywood heaven. They play feuding co-workers in a Budapest gift shop who detest each other, unaware that each is the other's secret pen pal and budding sweetheart. Stewart's versatile, slightly awkward, everyman style plays perfectly against Sullavan's balance of vulnerability and abrasive temperament, and their chemistry on screen is unmistakable. The top-notch supporting cast features Oscar nominee Frank Morgan, who played the Wizard of Oz the year before, as the high-strung store owner, perennial scene stealer Felix Bressart as the meek sales clerk, who is Stewart's confidant, and Joseph Schildkraut as a sly and scheming womanizer with a secret of his own. Director Ernst Lubitsch was one of Hollywood's most influential and admired directors. Films like Designed for Living, The Merry Widow, and Ninotchka had established a pattern of elegant, sophisticated movies filled with larger-than-life characters and snappy dialogue. But Lubitsch had worked in his father's tailoring business while growing up in his native Germany, and he was looking for a story about, as he put it, normal people living normal lives. He found it in a Hungarian stage play with an unpronounceable title written by Nicholas Laszlo, in which two bickering co-workers are unaware that each is the other's secret pen pal lover. Lubitsch bought the film rights, then worked closely with his longtime collaborator, screenwriter Samson Rafelson, to adapt the play for the screen, changing the locations and many of the characters, and retitling it The Shop Around the Corner. With its working-class characters and storefront setting, this would be new territory for Lubitsch, but that didn't alter his famously meticulous approach to the material. Director Martin Scorsese recently said, "Everything in a Lubitsch film counts. Every word, every gesture, every design choice for every set." Screenwriter Rafelson remembered how Lubitsch would study each scene as soon as it was written to determine and eliminate any whiff of cliché or stereotype. He'd always ask, how do we do that without doing that? In fact, that was his mantra on all his movies. Once satisfied with the script, Lubitsch quickly set up the project at MGM and began casting. He had said from the beginning that he wanted James Stewart to play the lead. Stewart was flying high at the time, coming off successes like You Can't Take It With You, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and his Oscar-winning performance in The Philadelphia Story. Lubitsch knew that he would be the perfect choice for the unassuming shop clerk, saying, "He's the opposite of the old-time matinee idol. He holds the audience with his very lack of a handsome face or suave manner." And who better to star opposite Stewart than Margaret Sullavan? Lubitsch knew she could play the pretentious shop girl with a perfect balance of charm and sarcasm. The director had been impressed by the unmistakable on-screen chemistry between Stewart and Sullavan in their previous film together, The Shop-Worn Angel. And he wasn't the only one. MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer declared, "They are red hot when they get in front of a camera. I don't know what the heck it is, but it sure jumps off the screen." But there was a problem. Sullavan was working on another movie and wouldn't be available when they needed her. "No problem," said Lubitsch, who felt so strongly about his two leads that he would push back his start date and wait for them both to become available. During that time, he worked closely with his art director and set decorator, determined to make the sets as realistic as possible, rather than the more glamorous look usually associated with his movies. Margaret Sullavan also got into the spirit of the movie before it could begin shooting. To prepare for her role, she bought a dress off the rack for $1.98 and proudly showed it to the director for his approval. His immediate reaction was, too stylish for a clerk looking for a job. But a moment later he said, "Leave it with me, maybe we can make it work." He then turned it over to his costume designer with instructions to hang it out in the sun to fade and then alter it to fit badly. The story is set in Budapest, Hungary, but filming took place entirely on MGM sound stages and backlot sets. The shoot itself was a bit stormy, as Margaret Sullavan much preferred acting on stage to working on film, and she was vocal about it. She had a flourishing career on Broadway, where she often received offers from studios and, almost as often, turned them down. Only reluctantly could she be lured to Hollywood, and then only under a very short-term contract. Once there, she was famously temperamental, both on the set and off. So it helped that she and Stewart had been good friends for years, ever since they met and worked together in Summerstock Theatre in Cape Cod, where, incidentally, they had met fellow actor Henry Fonda. Fonda and Stewart became lifelong friends, and Fonda and Sullavan got married, though it only lasted 15 tempestuous months. Despite the difficulties, everyone soon realized that the chemistry between the two actors fairly sizzled, mirroring their two characters who were romancing each other without knowing it. Yet even though he could deal with Sullavan's moods, Stewart admitted he sometimes got flustered working with her. One day it took him 48 takes to get a scene right. He later remembered, "We were in this little restaurant set, and I had the line, 'I will come out on the street and I will roll my trousers up to my knees.' For some reason, I couldn't say it in any believable way. The director was unhappy, and Maggie was furious, but she insisted we keep doing takes until I finally got it right." The Shop Around the Corner is definitely funny, but it also has a sentimental charm that turned what the studio anticipated would be a minor movie into a surprise hit, both domestically and in Europe, despite the beginning of World War II. Characteristically, director Ernst Lubitsch downplayed the movie after production, saying, "It's not a big picture, just a quiet little movie that seems to have some charm." But later, after further reflection, he called it the best picture I ever made in my life. And, as I mentioned earlier, The Shop Around the Corner has served as inspiration for a number of other shows, including the 1949 Judy Garland musical In the Good Old Summertime, a Broadway musical version called She Loves Me, and perhaps most famously, in writer-director Nora Ephron's You've Got Mail, starring Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, with email replacing handwritten letters. And what's the name of the bookstore that Ryan's character owns? The Shop Around the Corner, of course. So now please sit back and enjoy this funny and deeply moving film about star-crossed lovers who have no idea that they belong together. From 1940, it's The Shop Around the Corner.